As more renewable energy resources are added to our utility grids, is the process becoming easier? That depends on who you ask. It takes time. Financing needs to be secured. Proposals are vetted and debated. And consideration must be given to new ideas like LNG, even though it's not a renewable source of energy. All the while, the price of imported oil hovers around $130 a barrel, putting additional strain on our local economic recovery. Tonight, we'll hear from the consumer advocate, the chair of the PUC, and of course, the utilities, all people immersed in bringing about relief for ratepayers and the kind of change we need to make for our future.
The reality is we've never been where we are today. If we can decide we as a state share our resources, we pool everything together, then what Oahu needs to deliver to the neighbor islands is less expensive rates.
We think LNG coming to Hawaii will accelerate the renewable energy strategy for the state rather than hold it back or defer it.
As a general rate-making principle, consumers today shouldn't be paying for something that's going to benefit consumers of tomorrow. But it's a balance because there are certain things that we just have to invest in now, and unfortunately it's consumers today that are going to have to pay for it.
Here you really get to see the cost implications. The buck stops at the Public Utilities Commission.
Tough decisions, unprecedented opportunities. Billions of dollars being drained from our state to pay for imported oil. Billions needed to become energy independent. On a day-to-day basis, who's in charge of the plan to transform our energy infrastructure and resources? Who represents you in that process?
Well, I think there are a couple of roles. Clearly, we're the one that interfaces, goes directly to the customer with a bill. So ultimately, all the money that comes from customers to create the new system and to pay for oil and to move us off oil comes through us. A second role, at least historically, has been to be the primary planner. So the way the resource planning has been set up, it's the utilities plan, the integrated resource plan, with the advice of a citizens group and ultimately the oversight of the Public Utilities Commission and Consumer Advocate, but it is a utility plan.
If you look at just the last couple of years, we've probably had over $1 billion in wind solar infrastructure coming online. The Hawaii Clean Energy Initiative in its initial studies identified that we would be putting $14 billion in new infrastructure to meet our goals by 2030. The Public Utilities Commission has to oversee to make sure that all of these investments are prudent. And we're doing it with a very small staff and trying to build our capacity to meet this kind of demand.
Well, the consumer advocate protects the interests of the consumer in all matters that go before the Public Utilities Commission. The PUC is the decision maker. The consumer advocate takes an adversarial position, usually to the utility. We represent the interests of the consumer. But we also are very concerned about the viability, financial viability of the utilities.
If anything has been taught to us over the last 20 or 30 years is that these well-laid plans somehow don't work out. So I think our goal in the energy area has been to launch or to help launch as many boats as possible.
Should liquefied natural gas, or LNG, be the next boat we launch?
I don't think we should take anything off the table. That anything that can help to give relief to the electricity customer, we have to seriously look at.
LNG, like all other new fuels, has to come into a market in a way that the public can accept and the infrastructure can handle.
Kissel says Hawaii Gas first looked at LNG as an emergency backup fuel. Then the cost of LNG began to decline significantly.
And it moved from an emergency backup fuel in priority to a standard fuel as an alternative and competing source. Well, I hope that all of the power producers, and remember, HECO is only one of 7 or 8 power producers. I hope all of the power producers would look to us as a supplier, and I hope we can be the most competitive supplier.
LNG, if we can get it in, is a great bridge because current oil prices in the Asia-Pacific theater are crazy, and that's not going to change.
Alm says if LNG is to have any real impact on stabilizing electricity rates, it will have to replace oil on a fairly large scale. He also believes we shouldn't get locked into a long-term agreement that would conflict with future availability of renewable, firm power sources such as OTEC and geothermal. The consumer advocate and PUC have considered opening a public docket to bring together all parties to thoroughly vet any decision about the LNG question.
The difficulty right now that I'm seeing is the gas company is going in one direction, and it seems to have as its goal energy generation by bringing in LNG. And HECO is going in another direction. And there's only room for one player in the end. We can't have Hawaii Gas and HECO doing separate LNG projects. It would just be a waste of ratepayers' money as well as taxpayer dollars.
With so much at stake and so many opportunities to consider, there's no master plan or blueprint for Hawaii to follow. Our situation is unique to our island state. We asked these 4 people who are so involved on different levels, what do they see when they think about our future? And how would the utility of today need to change to support a 21st century energy independent Hawaii?
The statewide grid is a very important component to the overall solution. It's like any other piece of major infrastructure. You can argue about the pros and cons of the specifics, but you can't knock the concept. And if the administration's vision is carried out, we will have a cable not just linking a couple of islands, we'll have a cable linking the entire state, giving us an opportunity to really demonstrate to the rest of the world how you can integrate large-scale renewables with conventional fuels.
I see a day when we have a huge mix of renewable energy resources, where we have firm dispatchable power from biofuels, we have wind farms, we have solar photovoltaic systems, and we have a large distributed generation system so that there are a number of homes and businesses with rooftop solar. But I also see a huge role that energy efficiency needs to play in all of this.
One of the challenges that we face is we have a transmission and distribution system whose technology is close to 100 years old. And we want to transition from basically an analog system to a digital system. How do we do that? Here you have a state agency where our budget is between $5 and $6 million a year. We have to regulate a company with over $2 billion in assets. And it's not only the electricity company. I think the key to all of this is how do we move closer to a performance-based system? And my understanding in this European model, it is more of a collaborative process rather than adversarial.
Historically, all electricity was a one-way street. Power plant and power creation through wires to a home or business. The idea of a two-way grid where at the other end of it, at the home or the business, it's providing power that it's putting back into the system. That's a completely different model than electricity grew up with over the last 100 years. But that's where this century is going to take us. Because you're going to have centralized power, you're going to be monitoring wind and solar patterns to see what's going to happen. You're going to have load in electric cars, in batteries around the system. You're going to have external events coming at you, disturbances on the system, and you just got to move everything around so that if I'm a customer of power, the lights don't flicker, I don't see anything different. When I can share, I share. When I have need, it's given, but it's all seamless.
When we come back, we'll take you to a plantation-era hydro facility that's still producing electricity. And we'll hear from the state's only nonprofit, ratepayer-owned utility. Stay with us.
Yeah, absolutely. We are proud. We were 10 years old today. In the beginning, we have naysayers that says we're going to go in a debt spiral and we're going to lose our money, and here we're at 10 years. We're at over 23% equity. We've been giving millions of dollars back to our members every year. We're forging away on PVs, energy storage, smart grid, hydro, renewables. Yeah, absolutely.
Hawaiian Electric Company and its subsidiaries provide electricity to about 95% of the state, servicing Maui County, Hawaii Island, and Oahu. Parent company Hawaiian Electric Industries is a publicly traded company listed on the New York Stock Exchange. On the Garden Isle, there's a different utility model. Kauai Island Utility Cooperative is one of 900 utility cooperatives in the U.S. KIUC is not-for-profit and member-owned. Each of the 28,000 residential and 2,000 commercial customers on Kauai has a vote, and the utility is governed by 9 board members elected by and from the cooperative membership.
Well, basically, if you have an elected board of directors, they work with the staff to come up with our strategic plan. So they're driven by their members' initiative. You know, behind every board of directors, there are 3,000 members that voted for them. So they have a feel of what the island wants. And from there, we develop a strategic plan. And as far as renewable is concerned, it's 50% by 2023. Because we are a co-op, we have access to very low financing. And that's what makes KIUC able to go ahead and forge ahead in our PV projects. It drops the cost dramatically versus having developers come in and want to do projects for you. Basically, our whole interest is doing what's best for our members. We're never trying to make a buck out of developing PV. We're just trying to get the lowest possible energy costs. PVs, we're well on our way. We should have about 25 megawatts of PVs on Kauai itself in the next year or so. Big project, largest in the state, and we also have energy storage to help mitigate the PV side. We're also looking at biomass, which is a firm energy. It's going to be a capacity contract. We're going to have that when we need it. So between those three, you know, also kind of looking at biofuels, of course, if that becomes available at a rate that we think it's competitive with what we can do from our renewable generation, that's something we'll look at. You know, we'll look at, basically it's kind of easy. If it's to our members' benefit, we want to try it. If there's a high risk and our members aren't comfortable with it from a board's perspective, we're not going to do it. So
today, KIUC draws 9% of its daily power from 8 small hydro facilities spread across the island, all built during the plantation era. 2 are owned by KIUC. Unlike intermittent sources of solar and wind, hydropower on Kauai is considered to be firm power because the island's rivers and streams are fed by the tropical rainforest environment of Mount Waialeale. The simplicity and reliability of hydropower is appealing. It's low-tech and low-maintenance, environmentally clean. And we found out these hydro facilities are certainly off the beaten path and for the most part, out of sight.
We're here at the lower hydro forebay. Basically, we're taking the ditch behind us and it's going to this traveling grate that screens out large debris, and it goes into the penstock, which is a black pipe that eventually goes down the hill to feed the hydro to produce electrical energy. What you're seeing over here is an overflow, so we got a lot of water right here because we're actually overflowing the water and it actually goes out under us and hits the river earlier. What's interesting about this, if we look behind us, we're on a ridge. The river is down below us. So when you think about it, how are we getting the river that's down below us up here? Well, way up in the mountains where the river is at this same elevation, they're diverting the water. This is a turbine that captures the water's energy from the penstock, and it's turning a wheel, and that's connected to an electrical generator that's on the opposite side, which converts the water to electrical energy. And basically what we saw outside was the tail race, which is the output of the water.
KIUC plans to build 6 more hydro sites, and if that expansion happens, then 30% of Kauai's power would come from hydro. Basically, the same technology that can be traced back to 1905, when Kauai Electric was incorporated for the purpose of building a 2.4 megawatt hydroelectric plant for McBride Sugar Company on the Wainiha River. Last year, KIUC spent $98 million purchasing oil to generate electricity for the small island of Kauai. How does KIUC's model and plan fit into other statewide initiatives?
personally speaking. On Kauai, we know whatever we do will probably make little impact as far as a state's initiative, but we're going to do that anyway. I think we should move ahead. I think we're moving at the right rate. Some people may think we're moving slow, but I've been working for utility for 23 years, and there's a lot to take into consideration. I think utility is a very complex business that a lot of people don't understand, but I think it is important for our economy. I think our jobs, my son thinks sustainability and renewable, there's going to be a lot of jobs in the future. This is my son, 17-year-old senior, telling me this. So he wants to go into environmental science. He thinks we're burning too much oil. Now he's talking to a father that's going to be sitting on the opposite side of the table, and he's going to be telling that. So our children are being brought up. So maybe it's just a matter of a generational thing where what they're being taught in school is going to move forward. So I think you can't rush these kind of things. I think if you're going to transform it, you need to do it the right way.
This is a treasure. You don't want to go and tell everybody there is treasure over there. You find it good, you don't find it, tough luck. Planting, it's a way of life. It's not just putting a seed in the ground, it's really feeling that. That's why when we plant with the children, we ask the children to say good night to the seeds.
Makaha Elementary students have a very special neighbor. Hawai'i o Makaha is a grant-supported program approved by the DOE and a very popular part of the curriculum at Makaha Elementary. The 5-acre parcel of abandoned land is owned by the Catholic Diocese of Honolulu. Today, it's a hands-on laboratory providing an educational program where students learn traditional Hawaiian values and how they connect with contemporary practices in sustainable living and renewable energy. The program's executive director is Luigi Coquillo. The students and parents call him Mr. Gigi. Coquillo is an Italian-born former Catholic priest who arrived in Hawaii in the late 70s after being deported from the Philippines by President Marcos. As a priest, he worked with the people of Tondo, the largest squatter community in Asia. In Hawaii, he became involved in the struggle for social justice on behalf of Hansen's disease patients of Halemohalu. He made Makaha his home and became one of the founders of Hawai'i o Makaha in 1979.
We have the land, we have the water, we have the sun. Yeah. So 1995, with the 6th graders, we were talking about solar power. So we decided to build a small solar house. So we put the batteries, we put the solar panels, we put the solar water, so to become self-sufficient, yeah? And afterwards, these past years, we said, okay, maybe you can come completely self-sufficient electricity-wise. Well, we started to put all the solar water heater in the different places in the farm. And recently, we put all the PV, so we are completely self-sufficient.
Coquillo says the farm's electric bill has gone from about $500 a month to $16. In addition to solar water heating and photovoltaic, the farm also makes use of solar technology for cooking. In fact, that's one of the students' first lessons in renewable energy.
Well, we start with the Hawaiian values. Even when they enter the farm or come to the visit, they need to do the Hawaiian protocol, and that is they do the oli kahea, or where they call out and they all sing as a class. They do an oli, and we're there to welcome them, and then we respond with the oli komo, which is to invite them to come in.
Komo mai.
I was extremely impressed that they had any sort of prior knowledge on solar energy, on even electricity, and that they had known about solar panels. Last year, they had come to the farm and they had learned about making a solar oven box and alternative energies. And so a lot of them recalled a lot of this knowledge, but also made connections with what they've seen around their houses, in the neighborhoods.
And after the lesson on how the sun can produce electricity, it was time to put that solar oven to work.
For them in technology, they love it. They love getting their hands in it. They love seeing the inner workings of technology. One of the things that we discussed before we come to the farm was talking about coming with an open heart. And I think a lot of kids, when they come to school, they don't necessarily come with an open heart, and they don't necessarily come with an open mind. But this place, and being here, it gives a power to them. We stress out as teachers a lot on math and reading. And sometimes science and social studies just kind of fall by the wayside. It's kind of like when we can get to it. But I just wanted to say to teachers out there that this is what inspires and this is what creates passion in kids. They actually care about these particular subjects. And that we can't let those go. They're so incredibly important to the future of Hawaii.
When we come back, more on this idea of why we will draw upon the values of our past in order to achieve the goals of our future. Please stay with us. Tonight we heard from the utilities that provide electricity to our state. Although they have very different business models and different plans for implementation, they have a shared vision for how the utility of the future will serve Hawaii's people. You heard from the consumer advocate who represents your interests during this process, as well as the regulatory agency that scrutinizes every proposal for finding alternatives to imported oil. And you saw the lessons young students in Makaha are learning from a 5-acre energy-independent, sustainable classroom, simply referred to as the farm. Remember to visit Hawaii Energy Policy Forum's website for more information on tonight's show. On behalf of the forum and all of us at Hawaii News Now, thank you for joining us tonight. We'll leave you with a final thought from Robbie Alm. We asked him if he thought this challenge before us is a transformational, defining moment for Hawaii. Aloha and good night.
That's why I'm doing this. I mean, I feel exactly the same way, that this is the one. We can do a lot with food, and we need to. We can do a lot with some other commodities, but energy is the one where Hawaii has the resources to show ourselves and the rest of the world that you can get off carbon, that you can live a modern lifestyle, that we can sustain ourselves, that in that way we can return to what these islands once were, which is a self-sustaining economy, at least as far as energy goes. Absolutely.